Well, welcome to Beers with Rich. I'm Rich, editor of Under the Radar Report. Well, this week, the Hunter Valley's Hope Brewery caught my eye. We all need a little bit of hope, but really the fact that this was on special was the real factor. It's called Gluten Free Pilsener. Well, I've never had a gluten free Pilsner before, so that's what this is. It's on the label. Let's crack it. Oh, froth. It's actually quite interesting. It's a bit fruitier than I'm used to. Nothing wrong with a bit of fruit, as they say in the coal mines. Look, there's a lot of chaos in the world and almost as much, if not more, talk, which is where I come in. Let's have a taste of that. Oh, more of this gluten-free Pilsner. So today we're talking markets, why value's kicking golds, oil, lithium, how to protect your precious portfolio. That's right, there's a lot to get through, so let's kick it off. Money's moving around. There's so much noise in the market at the moment. Heaps of it's moving around, but it's not moving out. At least not now. That might change, but right now the money's getting out of those blue sky stocks and into value. And that's what we're seeing improving the performance of our portfolios. So we're seeing it live in our own increasing valuations. And I guess it underpins, it's good because it reinforces our philosophy, which is of looking for assets that are cheap, with strong balance sheets and preferably earnings growth. But let's move on to what I know for sure, because with so much uncertainty, let's grab a little bit of certainty, which is what people love. I know that people love certainty. What else do I know? People love cash. We all need a bit of cash. Before, people were certain, like interest rates would stay low forever. I was certain of it. That hasn't proven to be the case. Now interest rates are moving up and that certainty is disappearing. And as that certainty disappears, people love the certainty of hard, cold cash. That's right, dividends. What's more important than dividends? Balance sheets. That's the engine room that produces dividends. Balance sheets and cash flow, without which you can't have dividends. So basically, what we've always prided ourselves on at Under the Radar is looking at balance sheets, is analysing balance sheets, because what lots of analysts, especially in broking firms, are fixated on is the short-termism of earnings. So if earnings hit a certain point or they don't, that's basically 95% of what they talk about. Balance sheets are for long-term investors because basically balance sheets come into their own when there's a crisis. So that's where you need that ballast to fall back on. Balance sheets are really important in crises, and that's what we've seen. That's what we've seen. That's what we saw in the financial crisis. That's what we saw in the pandemic, and we're seeing a crisis of sorts at the moment. And that's why, when you're looking at investing for the long term, you've got to have your eye on companies that have solid fundamentals. So that includes bulletproof balance sheets. And in this week's Blue Chip, we go through 9 of them. 9 companies with really strong balance sheets. One that caught my eye was Worley Parsons, because it's got a strong balance sheet, even though it's got like 1.65 billion in net debt. So that's a lot of net debt. It's a lot of debt for a company to say that it has a strong balance sheet. Well, you've got to marry that debt with the fact that it's generating over 9 billion in revenues. Marry that also with the fact that its earnings are underpinned by stronger oil prices on the one hand, as a contractor with a legacy in oil and gas space, but also that it's future facing. So it's got its finger in a lot of sustainability pies. So this is a good company, and that's just one of them. Get this week's blue chip, you'll see 8 more. So what I mentioned is oil, and that's a factor, because that's one that we looked at closely in this week's small cap report. And it's the center of everyone's thoughts because, well, I was born in the early 70s, but back then that hasn't escaped people's minds because it was one of the biggest crises the world's ever seen was the hyperinflation that occurred out of the oil, the oil crisis. So people are thinking, oh, is that happening again? Well, luckily, we've got more strings to our bow this time. There's more sources of energy, but even so, we still have what they call a supply side commodity shock. So that's what the central bankers are so concerned about because they don't know the playbook. But we're not central bankers. We just look for cheap stocks. Well, one of those cheap stocks was Karoon Energy this time last year. We looked at the oil price and saw that a squeeze was possible, saw that it was going to go through $100. Well, it's raced through $100. Karoon Energy's double that now. We're taking profits. When there's euphoria, you want to be taking profits. On the other hand, we see opportunities in lithium. Now, lithium, there's been a lot of hype about lithium, but we see the difference in lithium in that it's structural. So, which we go into in this week's report. Like basically, there's a certain level of supply in lithium, and the increasing demand in batteries, from EVs, from electric vehicles, means that demand is skyrocketing, but the supply won't increase because there's big barriers to entry. So that's where some really good companies can kick in. Like Pilbara Minerals we liked a while ago at 30 cents. Now it's $2.80. But there's a company that we've found that has an asset that we think is superior economics in WA to the Pilgaguna asset of Pilbara Minerals. So this one's really exciting. If you've ever seen, mining analysts get excited, well, you haven't seen anything. But that's what we saw this week at Under the Radar report. I mean, I wish I could explain more, but I think you'd have to have been there. Basically, I almost forgot how to protect your portfolio. Well, as we've said in the past, 15 stocks. What we're talking about here today, dividends and future-facing growth. So dividends on the one hand, income, but you also have to have your eye on the future, as we always say. Life's about the future. What else have we got in our bag of tricks? Well, this week in blue chip, we've got 40 blue chips listed. So we've got a lot of opportunities there. I've mentioned 9 of them. On the other hand, what we've also got coming up is 110 plus stocks in our research rundown. I mean, what's not exciting about that? Here's to Beers with Rich, and here's to discovering GFP, Gluten Free Pilsener.